One of the things I know, no matter how horrible your trauma is, healing is possible.
All right. Welcome back to the Alternative Flight Plan podcast. This is where we explore healing, recovery, and paths to well-being that often exist outside the conventional medical conversation. After a couple of decades in naval service, I learned that when the system you're operating in no longer works, the most important skill isn't necessarily compliance, it's discernment. That lesson has stayed with me through healthcare, coaching, and the deeper work of healing. My guest today is Jim Pehkonen. He is a trauma-informed coach and author whose work sits at the crossroads of psychology, personal growth, family systems, and emerging conversations around artificial intelligence. Jim has written numerous books, including Wounds to Wisdom, The Art of Healing Trauma, DNA Results, Navigating Peaceful Family Dynamics, and Conversations with Artificial Intelligence. He's also contributed a chapter to the Amazon #1 bestseller, The Handbook for Human Potential, which is in the category of holistic medicine. Jim also brings a deeply personal perspective. He had a near-death experience that has profoundly shaped his approach to trauma and the human experience. What I appreciate most about his work is his ability to translate complex and often overwhelming experiences like trauma, family dynamics, identity, into something that's practical, humane, and accessible. His approach emphasizes reflection, curiosity, and personal agency rather than pathology. So today, we're going to talk about how trauma can become wisdom, how insight can transform family systems, and how to engage new tools like AI without losing our humanity in the process. And I think that one's going to be a really important one. So let's file our alternate flight plan, strapped into our ejection seats, get airborne, and we're going to leave off the autopilot. We're going to explore what healing can look like. All right. So, Jim, welcome.
Thank you. And that was a beautiful introduction. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Jim Pehkonen. I'm a life architect. I have been coaching now for 20 years and about 16 days.
Okay. There are so many things that we can break down about your journey. I almost want to start with one of the most recent ones, which is the near-death experience, because I know you had a pretty big collection of skills and tools and bits of wisdom, but I think that one just it's almost like the cherry on top of the sundae. If you're willing to go in depth on that, let's talk a little bit about what happened and how that reframed how you were doing the work that you had already started.
Yeah, thank you. I was involved in a freak accident, June 26th. I got myself between a piece of machinery and a fence. And the most interesting thing was, when a freak accident happens, the first thing I did is I looked down and I'm like, you really messed up, but it's okay. We'll get out of this. But then literally as my thumb went up against my body and it accelerated this travel trailer mover, what I thought was the fence breaking, and I figured, oh, there's the fence breaking, I'm going to be okay. I've later realized were my ribs breaking, and it lifted me up and it hung me there. And all I could think of is I'm looking down, both hands are pinned against me, and it's like, man, you really messed up this time. And in that moment, I'm like, you're going to die. Like, this is it. You are going to die. And I have never had the level of peace that just flowed over me. I had no regrets. I did a quick life assessment and it was like, oh man, it's like you've done all these cool things. You traveled to all these cool places. And it's like, and it's going to end right here looking at these very beautiful mountains. And I was really at peace. And then a unique thing happened is it began to gray out or white out, and I started seeing stars. And then my late father came to me and said, it's not your time. And after he said that, the machine stopped. and I was able to push off and fall to the ground. And they rolled me down to the emergency room, and there were two people around, and I'm like, the pain is killing me. They moved me to a bed that hurt really bad, and they gave me some fentanyl. And the one looked over at the other, it's like, and we can't figure out how you didn't die, because the way your ribs broke, they should have just punctured your lungs and you should have bled out. And I'm just like, yeah. And that led to 6 days being in the ICU. It really led to a lot of life reflection. Like once you knock on the door of death, but you're told it's not your time, there is a reflection and a shift. And I am in the middle of that shift now. So it's shifted my coaching practice. I am in the middle of shifting that coaching practice.
Well, let's dig into your psychology there. I think many people go through life and never have to. I've experienced something similar where I had a bike accident in July of 2022 that put me in Harborview here in Seattle with a couple of. I had like 6 broken ribs, a partially collapsed lung, some internal bleeding, and they kept me for observation overnight to make sure I wasn't going to bleed out. And I tell you what, I don't identify that as a near-death experience because, I didn't have any visitors. I was actually very dissociated at the time, making phone calls while I'm in the ambulance on the way. Like that's what people who are always in control do. Let me call and make sure somebody's going to take care of my dog while I'm in the ER dying.
Yeah.
It wasn't that bad, thank goodness. But I tell you what, I had some really, really deep conversations with my partner and one of my best friends. Sitting by my bedside going, wow, that was scary. And what happens, even at 52, I knew I could die, but it didn't really touch me the way that, I've had a very dangerous career. I've almost died in airplanes, but it's different when you're you're lying in a hospital bed. You've got a thing around your neck. You cannot move. You cannot eat. You cannot drink. And all you can do is sit there and think about your mortality. I know how it changed me because it completely, like this podcast probably would not exist without that experience. And I'm curious how the deep reflection that you were required to do, being in a hospital and then having to stay still for 8 hours or whatever, how does that change what you're doing?
I was actually cognizant of every single breath. Like something said, I'm going to wake your butt up again. And they did this. So I pondered and I pondered, and it's like, well, should I be a death doula? And I finally came to and I'm shifting my whole practice, and I'm in the middle of shifting my whole practice where now that I'm 20 years in, I want to work with young men. But it's like I want to make a difference with younger people, and I'm going to say younger men, late teens to late 20s, because of all the years I've been coaching, that has been my funnest demographic to work with, right? I started in addiction recovery. In addiction recovery, I was in one of the top 5 recovery centers. I moved to working with business owners, and then I moved with working with the management teams, and then with their husbands, wives, and partners. And then I started working with the young people, and the young people are by far the funnest. And
Well, I can only, I'm going to interrupt for just a second. I
yeah,
can only imagine it goes beyond fun. And like one of the reasons I asked Jim to come on the show today was because he is working in a space that I feel is a little bit underserved. And I suppose that underserved can be used to describe a lot of communities. This could be women. This could be people of color. This could be LGBTQ. But in reality, the space of who takes care of or who provides community for young men is overlooked, and we leave them we expect them to just figure things out for themselves, and they are left finding community in places that perhaps are not the best for them in the long run. And so one of the things that Jim brings to the table is the fact that he's not only addressing it, but he's leaning into how can I help young men live healthier, happier lives, which then ripples out into their relationships, their family relationships, their relationships with partners, their relationships with their children. So it's a really important group that that deserves just as much support and community as anybody else. Young men need to find places where they can find community. And that sounds, buzzwordy. You can call it a tribe, you can call it a chosen family, but finding people that you can be around. And I think the most important part of this is finding people that you can be around where you can be 100% yourself and not hide who you are, because it's the masking and the hiding of who we are that taxes our nervous system a lot when we're talking about community relationships. So Jim is a great place to go, or find somebody that is like Jim, or go to Jim and he can refer you to somebody in his network that does similar things that might serve you best. But in the apps, and I'm available. Just because I don't generally work with young men doesn't mean that I can't, because again, human, our experiences are different but similar, and I still know how to speak to those. But when all else fails, finding somebody, even one person that you can be entirely yourself with, is the first step in learning how to develop healthy relationships. It is a researched fact that women get different health care than men. However, I would like to acknowledge that it seems like young men in particular, nobody seems to address their healthcare, their mental health. Like, what's going on with an entire generation of young men that need mentorship?
Yeah. And I like right now I have two. I mean, to me, they're like sponges. They're just open. And I have two brothers that are just on retainer. Then anytime they have a problem, they call, I submit an invoice, I get paid. And the one who I worked with maybe 2 years ago, he gave me a nickname. And at first, I was so mad about the nickname, right? He called me the old coot from Nevada. Says, hey, got the old, he says, I need to talk to the old coot from Nevada. I'm like, and then I got like masculine. That was his way of saying a difference was being made. And I want to make more of a difference. Young men need some attention. They need to understand what it's like to take the journey from your head to your heart. Growing up, it's boys don't cry, man up. And I actually had a very, I didn't realize it at the time, but I had a very traumatic childhood. And it probably took me, I don't know, 10 to 15 years to really heal myself. And I'm still impacted by the traumas of my childhood. But if you're listening to this, your birthright is an incredible life. And if you understand how you create this experience called life, you can process your traumas and you can begin to design and live an incredible life.
I'm going to interject here because the titles of one of your books I find really interesting, because you're talking all about what's going on internally with belief patterns and programming. But your book is called DNA Results, Navigating Peaceful Family Dynamics. So even before you get to find a family dynamics, you're talking about DNA. What is that about?
So I have been a father now for 4 years, and my son is 40. So when I discovered that that I had a son, there are no books out there telling you how to establish a relationship with a new DNA discovery. Like it's not like I've just met a buddy. It's like, hey buddy, let's go out for, a coffee or whatever. Like, this is your son. And I had a one night stand back in 1984 with a woman who got pregnant and who did not tell me that she was pregnant. And then through some DNA testing, which is a whole nother story, I found out that I had a son and I didn't know how to communicate. How do you establish a relationship with somebody that you don't know, that you've had no experience with? So I wrote that book I made notes of what it was like. Everything. And after about 6 months and after we met, he has chosen not to have a relationship with me. And that's okay. Like, I accept that. But I outline in the book all the steps I went through to establish a relationship. And I really believe that we don't have a relationship because the biological mother, 45 minutes after I gave my son my phone number, the biological mother called and she's like, "You are not the father." And her promise to me was that I would never have a relationship with him. Now, I met one of my granddaughters, I met him. And so I wrote the book. I wrote the, I took notes because this was a whole different realm for me. In my occurring world, I do not have biological offspring. Um, just don't. And yet, and the discovery of this actually ripped my biological family apart because through this process, we discovered that my little sister is only my half sister.
I was just going to go there. I keep reading articles about people finding out that their family tree is not what they thought it was, and it's really shedding an interesting light on families in America and what that means.
Yeah, and the dynamics of this. So it's like, I was abused. I was sexually abused as a child. When I was 10 or so, it was a 16-year-old girl. When I was 11, 12, I don't remember exactly. My parents left me with a pedophile when they went to Europe for 3 weeks. So I was abused by this pedophile. And years later, my sister and I, my youngest sister, gave each other a DNA test. And as a result of that, like and it's interesting because she called me when she got her results and she's like, there must be a mistake. She's like, because it says you're my half brother. And I'm like, well, didn't anybody tell you? Because we've been talking about this for years as adults. We've all been talking about this. All of my siblings and my biological father, like, he knew you were not his. But this is the time that he said that, when my biological mother said she got pregnant, he raised you as his own. And the most ironic thing about this is her biological, and she was actually abused by the same man that abused me when I went off to college. My parents didn't know, so they left her with him, and he abused her also. And her biological father is the son of the man that abused her. So my youngest sibling has far more mental stuff to deal with than I do. Because what is it like knowing, that the man who abused you's son is your father?
That's a lot for one person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, where do you go after that? It's like,
Yeah. I know. It's like,
it's a
I,
lot.
I
Well,
mean,
it's actually a good segue because I think you and I both agree that you can heal from childhood experiences. You can heal from things like I've healed from that bike accident, both physically, emotionally, psychologically. And you wrote a chapter in a book that's called The Handbook for Human Potential. So
yes.
that tells me that there is life beyond. And I tell people about this, tell my patients about this all the time. Like, what are you going to look like once you integrate the things that have happened to you? There's this whole other chapter called The Best Version of You. Like, what's your potential? Where do you want to go now that you've got all these skills that you gained from integrating all the bad things that have happened to you? Tell us a little bit about the chapter that you wrote for the book about human potential.
So in the Healing for the Human Potential, Chandra, really good friend of mine, wanted me to write about trauma. And it's interesting because I remember I've done workshops in addiction recovery, and this got to be one of my points is like, well, who had the worst trauma? Somebody whose first grade teacher told them that they were stupid, and all of a sudden they put the lens of I am stupid on, and that's how they went through life, and they became an addict because they couldn't handle that. Or somebody who was sexually abused as a child. Which one of those has the worst trauma? And the answer is neither, because that is an equal level of trauma for the human's soul. And one of the things I know, no matter how horrible your trauma is, healing is possible. Every single human has a what I call a break from love that gives them a core story. And that core story is an incident that happened where they created a not of love statement about themselves. And they live as if that statement is the truth. And there are only 8 statements that I've been able to find working with people. But when you have, if you think about it, we have the light side and the dark side, right? The yin and the yang, whatever you want to say. And we can all think of times that we're so close to love that we're just radiating light. And then we can also think of times that we're so far from love, we are just in our darkness. And the roots of that darkness go back to the core story, go back to your original break from love. And so many people, I think this is the generation that we are learning how to heal. And one of the things I know is that when we heal ourselves, we begin to heal up the lineage of our parents. We can heal our parents, our grandparents, our great grandparents. That is my experience as a spiritual being. And I know, like, the key to my work, the deeper you understand your darkness, the more your darkness will be there, but it won't get any more of your life's energy. And if someone thinks about depression, it's like depression is you giving all of your life's energy to this darkness, and you're in this very low place, and love is so far away, and that becomes your perspective or your worldview.
That could be tough for people who are deep in depression to understand, for sure. But what I think you're talking about is you're talking about light and dark. I think it's I break it down into belief patterns. Like, we've been programmed by society, we've been programmed by our parents, we've been programmed by media, and this just gets worse and worse as social media does what it does.
Yeah.
But we don't realize that those belief patterns aren't actually our own, and that's where we get a little bit lost. So that there is dark there. And it's like, well, how do you describe human darkness? Like,
Yeah.
I think there are parts of our animalistic nature that we like to not own. Like, we're animals and we're humans. And at the same time, we're animals that can be programmed with healthy belief patterns. So we're animals that can be programmed with dysfunctional belief patterns. And losing sight of that, I think, is what leads us down the road to behaviors and mental states that are not sustainable.
Yeah. Here's the beauty of us is we have a light side and a dark side. And when an individual can learn to understand the roots of both the light and the dark, and the roots of the light are fairly easy, right? Because we are all born of love. When you look at a little baby, the only emotion that comes up is love, because that's where we came from, is the space of love. But then we have this break. And if you can grow to understand your break from love and understand the darkness, the pop through, I mean, you said it beautifully, through all the social conditioning, and yeah, social media is horrible. Social media is just so horrible. I think I'm 2 weeks on it. Yeah.
It can be positive too. It does something that humans are wired for, and that is connection. Like we are definitely our whole physiology is wired for connection and belonging and the tribal unit. When it gets repurposed to divide us and be divisive and all those things, and people. Part of the problem is that people don't realize how they're being manipulated, how their physiology is being hijacked a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet the deeper you understand that, and that physiology is not complex. Like one of the things that I know is your core story or your break from love. It just creates a platform it's a foundational thought process that before transformation, people will tend to fall right into that groove or that lane. After transformation, through understanding, because the key of everything I do is I just get people to understand. Nothing more, nothing less, right? When I work with people, their life is the program. This isn't the top 10 ways to be happy, because it's different based upon the experiences of different people. But there's common, and I don't know if you ever know, if you're sitting in a group and you're talking about trauma, you probably will have experienced this. Even though somebody had a different type of trauma, you can still relate. And our mind tends to take the experiences and it has them be very similar, so you can relate to another person's trauma.
It's similar because the impact on the nervous system is the same. Like we're all wired generally speaking, like there are neurodivergence and there are folks on the spectrum, and I want to acknowledge that. But and those people might respond a little bit differently. But for the neuronormative person, our physiology responds the same to a traumatic, like your parent created a rupture because they didn't have the bandwidth to do something appropriately, and then didn't have the framework to repair that, and that for the nervous system, that's no different than having a traumatic experience like sexual assault.
Yeah. And if you look at it, that nervous system is our internal operating system. And healing is not a strategy. Healing is understanding. And it's like, as you heal, you move on from being a survivor of your past to being an architect of your future, because you now understand. And you're right. It, like, the trauma that lives in my nervous system is very similar to the trauma that lives in your nervous system.
It's the hyperactivity of the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, hypervigilance, all those things. I was scrolling through a veteran post not too long ago about PTSD, and one of the commenters ardently says there is no cure for PTSD, and I'm like, but really, like we know there is. The human body, the physiology of the nervous system can heal just like a cut heals. I say this to patients all the time. You put a Band-Aid on a cut and you pull it off a week later, and magically, for most people, it heals. Like your physiology is no different. We just have to approach it a little bit differently.
And I will say, your physiology, just like a cut or a wound, like if we get a cut or a wound on the hand here, it heals from the inside out. The moment you cover it and protect it from further damage, it begins healing deep on the inside out. Our physiology is no different. We heal from the inside out. And it's I'm actually part of a group of 21 men, and earlier this year, just a few days before my freak accident, I was out in the Carolinas. We all get together once a year, and I did a little more than a microdose, but less than a healing dose. I did a dose with the one with the most serious PTSD. Um, we chose he not do it, because one of the things about psychedelics is if you don't understand what might open up when you open up Pandora's box, it's not wise to do. It's just not wise. But they are finding through different psychedelics, right? Ketamine, magic mushrooms, ibogaine, like all these things, they are finding that for mushroom, I've been using mushrooms about 6 years. Mushrooms are, there is something about microdosing or healing doses, and your healing doses, right? It's set and setting, and there's something about that that assists, that almost turbocharges the healing process. So because I truly believe any PTSD, it can be healed. And there's a time that I studied under a Cherokee medicine man, and one of the things he said is that anytime a Cherokee soldier comes back from war, they go through a process, and the Cherokee soldiers do not suffer from PTSD because all of the old men of the tribe come together, all of the spiritual healers of the tribe come together, and they do it a little bit differently, but they process the trauma and they don't experience it. So it's,
I think the key there is community. I'm reading a book that's certainly not for everyone. It's called The Black Book of Power by a guy named Stan Taylor. Stan Taylor is a pseudonym, but it talks about how we don't even exist outside the context of another person, and how mirror neurons are so important in how we relate and heal. And I would submit to you that it's less about the mushrooms. And I've done plenty of psychedelics. I've talked openly on the show about that, but I'll bet I could have if I found a different way with the right community and the right support to heal without the use. And there are lots of ways to access that. There's hypnosis, there's sweat lodges, that's another indigenous. There are the sun dances, that's another indigenous ceremony. But I think part of the challenge of Western culture and quote unquote white is to find our way back to doing these sacred ceremonies, whatever sacred ceremony looks like for you, that actually puts us in community. And if that's with mushrooms, that's awesome. But if it's not, there are definitely other ways to do that.
may I give you a very powerful example of another one that is non-psychedelic that I have done with over 30,000 people, and I have witnessed miracles in recovery center rooms, which is something called breath work. Breath work, and there is breath, there is music, and there is spirit. And there is, I have seen more miracles, people doing breath work and emerging on the other side. They don't even know what happens. And one person that I did, it's like, you snuck psychedelics in. I know you snuck psychedelics in because, and I'm like, nope, it was air, it was music, and it was you setting an intention, doing the breath work. That is, and if you're listening to this, find a breath work session in your area and do it, because that is why it was so accepted in the recovery centers, because it wasn't psychedelics. It was a conversation that I had for 1 hour ahead of time where I got their minds in the space that they were open for healing. We did the breath work, and then after the breath work, we processed it. There was one facility that I worked with for years. They would do all the tapping, they would do all the processing. So by the time I got there on Tuesday night, everybody was a total mess. And they told me after that session, after those 2.5 hours, they said the rest of the week was very calm, and the therapeutic team was able to work with them because breath work is a non-psychedelic way to open them up, just like mushrooms.
And we know this, like there are people who meditate for a living, Tibetan monks, Buddhist monks, and we've seen this bear out. But for some reason in our Western culture, we call it a miracle, because from the Western convention, these things shouldn't be possible. And yet for millennia, we know that based on the work of sages. I think part of the challenge is our instant need for gratification. This is breath work. Like it's a practice. and it can be challenging when we're not used to doing it, to calm our mind. But it's a practice that takes application and discipline. And a lot of people don't like that. They want to feel better now.
Right. Well, and remember, we are a pharmaceutically oriented community where just give me a pill if I have a pill. And I will use the example of my near-death experience. I was on 5 pills. They would not let me take any of my supplements. They would not let me take any of my nutritional mushrooms. They're like, you have to go off everything. And after I got out of the hospital, they gave me 14 days of all of these, including Oxy. And after those 14 days, I got off everything. I got back on what I feel heals my body. And people, I mean, I went to Burning Man. I spent 16 days at a festival a few months after I broke my back. Now, granted, my heart surgeon, my cardiac dude was like, why do you want to go to Burning Man? And he's like, you can't lift anything over 10 pounds. You can't twist. You can't do this. And I'm like, I got it. And I assembled a team. I had 6 people that helped me set everything up. There were 7 people that helped me take everything down. I was in a camp that anytime I had to lift a bag of ice, somebody went and got it, brought it back. But I was with my tribe and I was doing all of my supplements. Healing very much is possible, and healing starts in the mind. Yeah, right. My ribs still hurt, but
Well, and again, I want to stress this. It goes beyond healing and goes into being able to live your best life. So we got to wrap this up. This has been a really interesting conversation. Perhaps we can have you on again in the future to talk more. I'm sure there are like we scratched the surface on psychedelics. We can go way deeper down that rabbit hole. All right, Jim. So let's open it up for really quick for any last thoughts. And if you could share with people how they can find you should they want to work with you, please do that.
So first off, if you've listened all the way through and you've listened to all these crazy stories, thank you so much. Healing is possible. Healing really is possible. If you want to get a hold of me, I can be reached at jim@amazinglifedesign.com. I offer a fee-waived initial consultation to make sure it. I also have amazinglifedesign.com. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. And again, a huge thank you to you, Doctor, and to every person listening. But we're in a time where we are healing, and it's like we're making it easier for the next generation. And if you happen to know a young male human who just isn't getting it, whatever it is, reach out. I'd love to have a conversation with them, because the younger they start, I'm going to use your word, malleable. They're very malleable to heal, and healing is beautiful. It really is. One last thing is, I was getting a new website earlier this year, so I contacted some of my old clients. My last client before COVID was a young man, and this young man's mother said that I gave him the wisdom of his grandfather while he was still in high school. So
I think we'd all be better off with a little bit of wisdom from our grandparents. Yeah.
Right.
Some of us lose our grandparents way too soon. Thank you for listening. If you are in Washington State and you want medical care, I am available in Port Townsend or via telemedicine. You can find me at meridianpassagewellness.com. You can reach out to me a number of different ways. hello@meridianpassagewellness.com. I'm on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Facebook as the Alternative Flight Plan and Meridian Passage, and then all our reels and shows are on YouTube as well. If you like the episode, please like, subscribe, and most importantly, as I always say, please share with someone that you think would benefit from hearing the message today. And I can't stress enough that the overall message is to don't give up and keep looking, because there's a solution for you out there. All right. Thanks for tuning in to the Alternative Flight Plan podcast. And we look forward to checking in with you next time. Thanks very much.